Welcome to the Expert Exchange, the podcast where knowledge meets success. With your host, Joshua Carnes, and expert guests Karen Schimpf and Krystal Loyd. Today's show is brought to you by Lion Business Advisors.
The content in this show is for informational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. The Expert Exchange is not a fiduciary by virtue of any person's use of or access to this content. The Expert Exchange is not licensed to practice law or provide legal advice. Nothing contained within this show is intended to be an offer to either buy or sell securities.
Welcome to the Expert Exchange, the podcast where knowledge meets success. I'm your host, Josh Carnes, and on today's show, we are going to be talking about Main Street business financing options and what it looks like for all those Main Street business owners to go out there and get financing. Joining me on today's show, we have two expert guests. First up, Karen Schimpf with Commercial Capital.
Thanks, Josh.
Also joining us is Krystal Loyd with Veritx Community Bank here in Austin.
Thank you, Josh.
At Lion Business Advisors, selling a business is not just a transaction. You've poured your heart and soul into your business. It's not just a paycheck, it's your legacy. The team at Lion Business Advisors is here to guide you through the process, ensuring your successful exit. Contact the team at Lion Business Advisors at 800-525-3542. That's 800-525-3542, or visit us at lionbusinessadvisors.com. Lion Business Advisors. Let the story of your next chapter begin with us.
As always, we're going to link both of their contact information down below. You'll be able to reach out to either one of them directly. So get ready to expand your horizons and refine your strategies as we dive into today's topic of Main Street business financing options. Both of all, thank you guys for coming out. Karen, why don't you take a moment, tell us about yourself, tell us about Commercial Capital and what you're doing over there.
Okay, so I am a commercial loan broker, and I've been doing this for quite some time now. In fact, Krystal and I know each other we've known each other, 10, 15 years?
Yeah, almost 15 now.
Anyway, so I started out, I worked for Chase, Wells, local banks here in Texas, and I'm really bad with time. I always say this, but I actually started to broker deals because the bank I worked for was bought out by another bank, and I decided that I had enough contacts that I could actually broker SBA loans versus dealing with one bank. So that's what I do. Yeah.
What is Commercial Capital?
So Commercial Capital is basically just a brokerage house for people that are seeking commercial financing that cannot get it from their local banks. Just because they can't get it there doesn't mean that they can't get it another way. So I'm providing financing options for those people.
Perfect. Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
And Krystal Loyd with Veritx Community Bank. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about your bank?
Thank you, Josh. So I've actually been in SBA lending for 15 years, almost 15 years, and actually started a little bit different than most. I started on the CDC side. So I started in the SBA 504 financing program as a CDC consultant, working with both the lender and the borrower to get the SBA 504 program over the finish line. So after doing that for about 6.5 years, I then made the transition into lending and have been working with banks ever since, being able to utilize both the SBA 7A and the 504 program. And Veritx Community Bank is based here in Texas, and it is a great bank. They brought me on as a senior VP, also a senior business development officer in a national position. So I'm looking at deals all over the country.
Nice. Well, welcome both of you. For those listening, Lion Business Advisors has worked with both of you for a while. We all have gotten to know each other through TAB, the Texas Association of Business Brokers, and these two are both experts in their field, and I'm excited to pick both y'all's brains as we dive into what it looks like for that everyday business owner going out there and trying to get financing for their business. So let's dive in. Let's start with some basics. When we're talking Main Street businesses or SBA, what do you guys consider a Main Street business?
Talking from the SBA perspective, we're looking at businesses that are doing around, or I should say up to 5 million.
I have so many different types of clients come to me. So, when people are looking at business, I have people that think that, which I do believe, running an apartment building is a
Mhm.
business. But obviously, as for SBA, they look at it differently. And so they're looking at people that actually either want to start up a business, acquire a business, or, expand their business. And what does that type of business mean? It could be a mom and pop operation. Typically, they would like you to not be working out of your house per se. So like the multi-level marketing type of business is not one of the businesses that we would be financing. Apartments are not for SBA. It's truly for that business that is seeking funds that, like I said, either want to start up, acquire, or expand their business.
Yeah, when someone calls us at Lion, we do a financial cap for what's Main Street and what's not, and we basically say if you qualify for SBA financing, you're going to be in that Main Street bucket. So we do anything under 5 million is technically a Main Street business, and then anything up, we say you're starting to move into what's called lower middle market and those things. And so most people, most businesses, I believe it's something like 70% of businesses are considered Main Street businesses. You guys have both already mentioned SBA quite a bit. So what is SBA? What does it stand for? How does it help business owners?
So, SBA is the Small Business Administration, and it is a government program, or I should say, government backed program that gives the ability for a bank to lend pursuant to the SBA guidelines and parameters to get a guarantee on that loan. So if that loan was to go bad, the bank can then ask the SBA to repurchase that loan from them. And so it makes it a little more palatable for credit of a bank to get on board with lending to startups, to, you know, um, business acquisitions with no collateral, all of the things that as a conventional, lender are looking for, we can mitigate some of those factors with SBA.
What are some of the main financing options that are available through SBA?
So I think the one that covers most options or most, it works for almost everyone is the SBA 7A program. So that's going to include real estate. It can include leasehold improvements. It can do ground up construction. It can also do inventory, working capital, equipment, FF&E.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really can encompass everything, where the 504 program is a little different, where it's only specific to real estate and improvements to real estate and heavy machinery and equipment. We're not going to be able to include inventory or working capital in that program. And then both of those obviously have different limits in how much SBA money you can get through those programs.
And then Karen, you hit on this earlier as what's not available through SBA. So what businesses are not going to get qualified through SBA?
Well, obviously, illegal type of businesses are not going to qualify. So if you have so far cannabis is not legal, so you cannot do cannabis. And then we talked about apartment buildings. I have a lot of investors that call me and thinking that SBA can actually do that. Now, there is one program they could do it under, and that would be the SBA disaster program for the SBA. But otherwise, you don't do that because you have to occupy 51% of the building in order to do that. So that's really key. Can your business occupy 51% of the space that you're going to be purchasing or acquiring or expanding, whatever you're doing on that? But so retail, if you're talking about, just buying a retail center, once again, if you're occupying 51% of that space, you could, but if you're not, that's investment. So they're going to be testing that to see if you're an investor or if you're an actual business.
So we've talked about SBA has its limitations because it's a government backing program. So what are the SBA loan limits as they look today?
Absolutely. So the 7A program, we do have a limit of 5 million as to what we can lend. Now, the 504 program is going to expand on that, and only the SBA portion of the loan that the CDC does will have that 5 million exposure limit. And that can be 20, 25, or 30% of the loan. So the total project. So, for instance, I was looking at a $23 million opportunity just a couple weeks ago, and that was going to go 504. And so it just depends on how the breakdown works out as to how the 504 program looks at it, whereas the 7A is very clear cut. 5 million is our exposure. And then also in the 504 program, we do have the capability of going green. And so that does add another 500,000 to our eligibility for SBA exposure.
And I think it's important to point out when you say you're not just talking Veritx community. That's SBA guidelines nationally. It's a
Correct.
5 million cap.
Well, the other thing I'd like to say is that, if you are a startup business, it doesn't have to be, it's a lot of people think it's just one loan. They're going to qualify for one loan. So it really isn't that. It's a total of. So if we're talking about the SBA 7A, they could have multiple loans as long as it doesn't exceed that 5 million.
Yeah, there's seller carry, there's traditional loans, lines of credit. Most business transactions that we've done lately have all included lines of credit for the buyers. So correct, there's a lot of options available to them. I wanted to hit or kind of get your guys' opinion on the current petition that's going around the IBBA, which is the International Business Broker Association, has promoted it. TAB here in Texas, the Texas Association of Business Brokers, has got behind it. There's currently a petition to increase the SBA loan limits from 5 million to 10 million. You guys in favor of it? Good idea, bad idea? What's your opinion on that?
I'm absolutely in favor for it. I think, opening that up to when it really comes down to, we're looking at businesses that are growing, we're looking at real estate that is increasing in value. We're doing a disservice to our small businesses by not moving that limit up. I know when I first started in SBA lending 15 years ago, they had just moved the needle from 2.5 to 5 million. Well, 15 years is a long time to not follow inflation.
Yeah.
And so I'm completely for the program increasing so that we can help more businesses.
I don't have anything to add to that one because I believe in it too.
What is the best way for business owners out there today to start the process to see what they qualify for? Each of you do the same thing, but yet different. You work with several banks, you work with one bank. So what is the best way for a business owner to reach out and start the process with each of you to see what it is they qualify for?
I'm going to say a phone call.
Phone call?
Because there is so much information out there. There's good information, there's bad information. And I think that you've got to look at the business holistically and be able to evaluate where they're going to be able to best utilize the SBA program, because it's going to look different. And each bank is going to look at that business differently as well. And some will dive into what the actual business needs are. Some are not. They're going to look at it as a transaction. I personally like to really dive in and see, what's the trajectory of the business? Do they want to own land in the next couple years? How can we set that up so that they can utilize SBA program funds, in the future? So I really don't know where to send them besides send them to me and have that initial phone call, because I think we can really uncover quite a bit of information in a quick 30, 40-minute session. And then they'll have a great information to take with them, follow up with email because it's a lot to digest. But I don't know of any resources, do you, that can really...
Unless, of course, they're thinking about going into the SBDC, the Small Business Development Center, or SCORE. But even then, I agree with Krystal. I think you need to talk to someone first because they need to understand your project and understand what you're trying to achieve and what your goals are going to be so that you can start strategizing. So, you have to have that conversation. We have conversations all day long. I think it's a lot easier than trying to gather all your documentation and then plopping it on someone's desk. It doesn't work that way. You need to talk first about, they need to find out what you're trying to achieve, and then they'll start, gathering documents that will support what you were just talking about. So obviously, numbers are important to the SBA process, any type of lending process. So they're going to look at your tax returns and all that. But the first step is really that call to someone to talk to them.
And one of the things that I've loved about the business banking world that differs from, let's say, the personal banking is the fact that bankers work together and commercial loan brokers work with bankers, because when it comes to commercial transactions, banks have sweet spots. And what's been really great, at least here in Central Texas, and it goes a lot of other places, but the banks work together. They know each other's sweet spots, and that's one of the big values that a commercial loan broker, they know which bank is working where and how to plug a business owner in so that they can get the best possible financing options for their unique thing, because it's not personal loans. It's a very different process.
100%. I think you hit it, right on the head there, because I know for me personally, probably 60% of my business comes directly from other lenders, and they may not be offering SBA, or they may offer SBA, but it doesn't fit in their box, or it's out of their territory.
Well, and I just want to say that, what I do a little bit differently is my lenders are also different from the local banks. So I have nonprofit organizations, things like that. And so, like, for example, one of my lenders is most definitely nonprofit. And I have a situation right now that we're dealing with an automotive shop that's had some major issues. Well, they're Hispanic, and because they're Hispanic, they're going to make some exceptions to it. So, every lender, like you said, has a different wheelhouse. And so how do you know that? And you can go from bank to bank to bank to try to figure that out. I mean, I've had people in the past where they're like, what are you going to do that's different? Because I've tried all the banks. And it's just like, because every lender is different. And so I do know their sweet spots. And like I said, I deal with, major banks or, just different types of lenders that look at things a little bit differently than the local banks. And so I'm able to, place it with those type of lenders.
And we've hit on the fact that business financing is completely different than personal financing and get a mortgage or anything like that. So what are some of the key factors that lenders typically look for when financing a business versus personal stuff?
Several factors that we're looking at. Creditability. Do they have, credit behind them as far as, a decent credit score? Do they have enough cash available to do a down payment? Do they have enough cash for post liquidity once they've closed that loan and they're now operating? There's several different items. Collateral, is another thing we're going to look at. We're not all SBA is collateral based lending. And there's some, lenders that will be able to do more non-collateralized loans than other. But is there collateral available? I think one thing people forget about SBA, or maybe they're not aware of, is that, we do have to take collateral if it's available. And we also have to take life insurance if collateral is not available. So those are two big items, as well as a personal guarantee from at least one person. So an owner that has 20% or more ownership is going to have to personally guarantee the loan. And so that is a little bit different sometimes than a conventional loan where they may not require those items, where in SBA, we have to require them. But if there is no collateral to take, then there's nothing for us to, we can't take collateral that's not there. So that's where the life insurance policy comes in. But sometimes a life insurance policy, isn't a factor. Maybe they can't get a life insurance policy. So we still will look at those opportunities, and we just have to note that in our write-up.
Well, and the other piece of that, I think, is experience in the industry. That's a big key. I have people that will want to start a restaurant. Well, they have no restaurant experience or buy a hotel. Well, if you don't have direct industry experience, is going to be pretty tough. I'm always trying to tell them how they can do that. There is a way around that, but they're still having to find someone that does have that direct industry experience.
So I think one of the big things that you've hit on is it's not just the borrower. What they're buying or what they're financing is just as important. The actual finances, if they're buying a business or if they're buying a hotel or if they're buying properties, the actual finances, banks are going to look at, will the business itself or will the opportunity itself support the payment? So there is a lot to do with the individual buying and their credit worthiness, but there's the whole added layer of what they're buying, right?
Absolutely. And SBA actually just, changed a couple of their rules. And
Mm-hmm.
so, as a lender, we're looking at opportunities now where partners can buy out their other partner. And we have never been able to do that in SBA program before, and now we can. But we also can't add back depreciation and amortization when we do that.
Mm.
And so that's, a hurdle that I haven't figured out how to get around yet when we're evaluating businesses, because if it was an acquisition, we're adding that back in. So
Yeah.
it's making the numbers look better. And so that's something to take into consideration whenever we're looking at those opportunities too.
What are some of the common misconceptions that each of you hear when someone's looking to get an SBA loan?
But it's like financing a home equity, a home.
Yeah. Home loan.
Yeah, it's just there's so
I
much
have good credit, I
involved.
have cash, why don't I qualify?
Well, it's I have great credit. That's the first thing I will hear, and then I have a lot of liquidity and all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot involved in it when you're talking about. I have a deal right now that is a dentist, and he wants to buy another office. The issue is that business is not going to debt service the debt. They took every cash, all their cash, wrote everything off that they possibly could, and they're showing a loss. There's no way you can debt service. And I think a lot of people don't really understand. If your net is negative, you cannot debt service a loan. That's what we're looking for. Can this new business that you're looking at buying debt service a loan? And it surprises me. People do not understand that pieces to it. So there's a lot of different pieces. They're going to be looking at the business you're buying. They're going to look at your experience. They're going to look at you, your liquidity, your net worth. But they're also looking at that business. If it's not going to debt service, they're not going to do the deal.
So common misconceptions, people think that, oh, I'm going to get an SBA loan because there's longer terms. And so your cash flow is obviously going to be better when you can stretch a loan out longer and there's no balloon payments.
The timing piece comes from COVID, right? So once COVID hit, everyone may or may not realize it, but SBA is who picked up PPP loans and all of the stuff to help the idle loans, everything to help get people. And if you were buying a business at that time, all of a sudden those turn rates went to like 6-7 months. And so, we tell people getting SBA financing is really not that bad of a timeline right now, as long as everybody has all their ducks in a row. You can get SBA loans done, 45 days right now? Or...
I mean, 45 is, no real estate, obviously. So we're not getting any appraisals or equipment, valuations done. But I mean, generally, it's going to take around 60 days to 75, 90 days if there's real estate involved. But in the whole scheme of things, that's not actually very long. I think what can project and make it longer is when you're working with someone that maybe doesn't know the program very well. And, that carries over to ones that actually do know the program and can help you get through it faster. So
the exception, though, is of course is if you are doing like a lease improvement.
True.
When we add that construction piece to it, oh man, it changes everything.
Or you're buying real estate and, we can't close an SBA loan until you have permits.
Permits. That's what
we're waiting. You're already having to do all of the construction or not all of them, but a good portion of them so that you can get your budget set. So we know what our uses and sources are going to be so that we know what the loan, is going to be financing. And so getting that all in line can take quite a bit of time. And we don't typically take land out in advance. and just let it sit there. We like to do it all at one time.
So we've hit on SBA and big financing. You touched a little bit on this earlier, alternatives to SBA financing. So what are some of those alternative resources that might be available to a business owner besides just going SBA today?
Well, you can do accounts receivables.
Mhm.
That's probably one of the other option.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, I have a lot of different options, but it depends on what kind of rate you want, right? So there's
Right.
merchant capital type of deals. And yeah, and those are just really high
Those are
rates.
the credit card processing deals, right?
Well, they're also what it is like if you have a restaurant is probably one of the harder type of transactions to do. It's the highest risk, so everything is rated on risk, obviously. And when you can't go SBA, the options are MCA products, and they will draw on your account on a weekly basis. They're very difficult to work with. So yes, there are options out there. It's just at what cost? What cost to you? What cost to the business? So is it worth it? And sometimes it is, because sometimes that MCA product is just to be there for short term. You just need some inventory to come in. And then once that is resolved and you can get it sold, it turns everything around. But yeah, so those are some of the options, but it's just, at what cost are the other options?
Because sometimes you just need proof of concept.
Mhm.
And, whether it's equipment that you're having manufactured. And so you need to do some type of manufacturing type financing. And then that can be taken out potentially with SBA funds.
Right.
We do a lot of refinancing of, I won't say any names, but, different high interest, rate loans, like you were saying, they're pulling on a weekly or daily basis.
Mhm.
And so we can help once a business is stable enough, we can come in, give them additional working capital as well as get that financing that they have already on a more favorable term.
How is the current economic situation or even the current elections that are coming up affecting loans or SBA loans?
I honestly haven't seen too much of an effect. I think some of the larger projects maybe are holding off to see what's going to happen, but um, even in this higher rate environment that we're in right now, I'm still as busy as I've ever been. And I don't know if that's because I am in SBA. And so there's a little bit more stability with that
Mhm.
program than potentially conventional, because conventional may not be giving as long of terms right now as you can get in SBA. But the rate is a little bit higher than a conventional deal.
Yeah.
So there's trade-offs. But I haven't seen that it's affected the amount of loans coming in.
I think it depends on what bank you're dealing with, because,
Mhm.
I'm talking to lots of different banks on a regular basis, and it's kind of surprising to me right now that some of them are saying we're not really not lending. And so
Mm.
my pipeline is pretty large right now, just because some banks are not lending, so they're referring them over to me. Um, so I think there is some impact right now, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
It's one of those things where you really need to know who you're working with, what's going on, and what the current situations are. I think one of the things that's been great over the last few years is, even though this economic things is rates have gone up, but they're actually pretty stable right now. There's not these crazy spikes that are happening month to month. Unlike real estate stuff, you're not like trying to rush in lock periods because it could kill the deal. Like, rates just kind of are what they are, and you work the math backwards, and it works or it doesn't work. So we've noticed a ton of that. Um, are there any upcoming changes to the SBA program or just changes to the industry that business owners should be aware of?
There's been a lot of changes in SBA already here
Mhm.
recently.
That
And
there
so
has.
we don't usually see a lot until around October,
Mhm.
when the new or that's usually when a new SOP would come out or big updates to an SOP would happen.
Mhm.
But we did just have a ton of updates. So not really expecting too much, maybe some clarifications on some items. I'm really excited about one of the changes where when you're looking at a business that's looking to maybe acquire a same type of business, maybe in the same NAICS code, we now can look at those as 0% down because they already own a business in that same code. And so that is something that SBA has changed and kind of relaxed on. And what we've seen is a little bit more of relaxing on different opportunities for business owners, which is exciting. But that was one of the bigger changes that I've seen, and the partner buy-ins and partner buyouts. That was a really big change too.
One of the ones that happened over the last year or so that really threw me for a loop is that you can have multiple SBA loans as long as they're in a different NAIC code. So it's weird because generally speaking, most banks and most lenders and SBA want to see that you have that proven experience, what you're going to do, all of that. And then here they came out and said, well, you can get another loan as long as it's in a completely separate industry. So I think we'll hit some clarification or something, because that one just doesn't make sense to me. But
yeah, I haven't gone full force in that one yet
I don't know
because
anyone who
I'm
has.
waiting for the retraction to come. And who knows, maybe it won't. But yeah, it is interesting where they've relaxed and where they haven't. So hopefully there'll be some more clarifications coming.
I think one of the things that I think maybe a lot of business owners know, but maybe some don't, is the relationship with a banker or a lender post-close or working up to it. How important is having a relationship with the person you're going to do financing with or working with in this industry?
I think it's huge. I look at all of my clients as part of my family. They're calling and texting me. I shouldn't say at all hours of the night. They're pretty good. But, I missed a call 2 weeks ago, and it was a client that I had closed a loan for 5 years ago. It was a business acquisition, and he was calling to let me know, and he left me a voicemail, and I will probably keep it forever, thanking me because he was about to go in and pay off his loan after 5 years, and that, he couldn't have done it without me and just wanted to call and let me know. I haven't talked to this guy for 2 years, but he knows I'm here. Helped him through PPP and helped him with his idle loan. And so, those first 3 years were kind of hairy after he took over the ownership of that business. And I was definitely there for him and, knew that he could call me. And I think that's key. I've been in the business long enough that I've had multiple repeat customers. And I think that's the highest form of, accomplishment for me as a lender, is having a client be happy with getting, whatever they're financing, and then come back to me for additional financing, whether it's to improve, whether it's to grow and expand or add a new business. That's what I'm here for, and that's what I thrive on. So
I think as a broker, it's a little bit different for us in the sense that, when you're working for a bank, you're really talking about they really are interested in that relationship. They're looking for that. They want to know that not only are you doing a loan with them, but that you're actually going to take your depository, which means your checking accounts, to be with them. I don't do that. I don't have a need for checking accounts, and my lenders are national lenders, so most times they're not asking for that piece of it. But I do have a lot of repeat clients because some of my deals are a little bit tougher, or deals that don't want, that aren't going to be done at the local banks. And so, for example, I had an internet business. It was a rural internet business, and they needed equipment, and they could not get any local bank to actually do that because every month they were cycling new pieces of equipment. And so it was very difficult. And so I was able to find a lender with one of my sources, but he kept coming back to me because he knew I could find different avenues for him. And so obviously I have repeat clients, but it is a different relationship than when you're dealing with a local bank, because they really, a lot of times they're coming out and visiting with you and picking up your profit and loss statements and your tax returns, and they're just checking things out. You really do have a relationship with the bank, the local banks, but they do want that depository business / checking account. with them. So be aware of that.
As we wrap up, can each of you share a success story of how you guys have helped a client and what that kind of looked like, that process with each of you, and then we'll close with how people can actually get a hold of y'all.
I'm going to let you go first.
Well, it's hard to just pick one.
I
I've got
know.
like 20, rolling around in my head.
Ugh.
I think one of my, oh man, one of my, I hate to say favorites
Mhm.
because my clients obviously know who I'm talking about. But there was a restaurant, and when I was working on the CDC side, I had a bank client ask me to help them put together a package.
Mhm.
And so I worked with these clients, and I was actually pregnant with my son, who is now 10 or almost 10. And I remember just the enthusiasm of walking in, meeting with them for the first time, seeing their vision, and just being in awe of what they were going to create and what they were going to do. Well, once we put the package together, the bank looked at it and they're like, oh, you guys can't hit these turns. We don't think you can do these numbers. So then we had to go back to the drawing table. And I was invested at that point.
Mhm.
And I was able to help them get set up with seller financing. Well, SBA says that once seller financing has been in place for 24 months, then it can be taken out with SBA financing. At that point, in 24 months, I was with a bank. And so I was able to finance their seller financing. And not only were they hitting their numbers, they were far exceeding them, and they needed to do more. And so we were able to do a huge expansion with that refinance. So that one is definitely one of my favorites. And then they've actually now gone and opened up a second concept, which I was able to help them and finance them with. And I just love that I've been able to work with them over the last 10 years. The client texted me 2 weeks ago. She's like, hey, I have a question. We jumped on a call. Just staying in contact with your clients in that way, and getting to see them at their establishments. I love
Mhm.
going to visit my clients, for personal and for business reasons. And it's just it makes it so much more fun being able to do that and have that relationship.
Well, I guess I have a similar story, but mine was a little bit different. They're actually a trucking company that was looking at buying their space that they were actually renting, and they had only been in business for it wasn't even quite yet 2 years. Most banks want to see a company be in business for 2 years before they'll look at their numbers
Mhm.
and actually do a loan for them. So what we did is we actually did an acquisition with a bridge piece, and once again, it was taken out with an SBA piece down the road. So
Nice.
it makes, it's just helping them. It's always thinking about different avenues. If you can't get it done one way, what's another way we can do this? So it is your clients do become very important to you. You want to make sure that they're successful in what they're doing, and yeah, and that's what we do. That's why we do what we do. We really like the people aspect of it,
Mhm.
don't you? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the same thing for you.
No, it's always the puzzle solving, and it's a blast when something actually closes and you're like, we did it, and the going back a couple years later and just seeing them still be successful is always fun. So, well, I enjoyed this. I think it was valuable information for those business owners that are out there wondering about SBA or trying to figure out how they're going to get financing or what their next steps are. For those business owners that are doing that and want to reach out to you, Karen, how can they get a hold of you?
So they can call me at 512-358-1511, or you can check out my website. It's www.applycommercialloans, that's plural.com.
Krystal, how about you?
And they can reach me at 512-568-2337, or they can go to our website, veritexbank.com/SBA.
Perfect. So if you've enjoyed what you've heard today and you want to find out more, you can always reach out to us on the expertexchange.pro. That's the expertexchange.pro. As always, we will link to both of their contact information, their LinkedIn profiles. Thank you for watching today. And remember, success is a journey, and we're thrilled to be a part of yours. We'll see you on the next episode as the Expert Exchange.
content on this show is information of a general nature and does not address the circumstances of any particular individual or entity. Nothing in this show constitutes professional or financial advice, nor does any information on the show constitute a comprehensive or complete statement of the matters discussed or the law relating thereto. The Expert Exchange is not a fiduciary by virtue of any person's use of or access to this content. You alone assume the sole responsibility of evaluating the merits and risks associated with the use of any information or content on the show before making any decisions based on such information. In exchange for using the content, you agree not to hold the Expert Exchange, its affiliates, or any third-party service provider liable for any possible claim for damages arising from any decision you make based on information or other content made available to you through the show. The Expert Exchange is not licensed to practice law or provide legal advice. Nothing contained within this show is intended to be an offer to either buy or sell securities.